I want to see essentially that they are taken out of central storage facilities
Right.
on mobile trailers and other things and actually deployed out in the field in strategic locations rather than sitting in a warehouse. And so there's a lot of nuclear weapons in the world that exist, and a lot of them are sitting in warehouses. And if you are planning to use nuclear weapons, two things matter. Well, actually, several things matter. One is you need to get those out into the field. And you need to get those deployed. You need to get them in locations. You need to get them moving around so that essentially they are not a target. So I need to see actual, I would like to see, not like to see, I obviously would not like to see, but I would need to see actually clearer rhetoric from the Russian side, and I would need to see movements to accompany those things. And I think that both of those things together matter. And what's interesting too, as well as the open source intelligence information that I talked about, one of the things we've seen too is we have seen unprecedented leaks from the Russian government during this conflict, because we know there are a lot of people in the Russian government who are essentially dissenters to the Putin ideology,
Right.
who are upset at the way this war has gone. And what's fascinating is in the past, the transparency organizations like WikiLeaks were able to get information essentially from democracies and people who were willing to release those documents. And it was much more difficult to get information from autocratic governments. But the war in Ukraine, right, has resulted in some shifts in Russia. And I believe that were Russia to be using nuclear weapons or to be seriously considering it, I think you would actually start to see leaks on Telegram channels
Interesting.
as well too. So I think a combination of several things. I think you'll see internal leaks from people within the Russian government who object to this, who want to make it very clear. And I think you would see actual movement of the weapons. And I think that you would see clearer rhetoric than what we've seen so far from Putin. So those things, I think, all of which would be concerning. And I would say, again, I think the probability is low, but don't rule it out. And if we start seeing those types of things happen, then we have a problem. But one of the other things too is for a while in the fall and winter, nuclear salience had started to go down in the world, right? Like the initial invasion had all of these nuclear threats. Now it's starting to pop up again with certain officials, making these statements. And what's interesting about it is, Russia, much like Iran, I would say, has a tradition of political officials and military officials engaged in nuclear posturing who don't, well, actually, not Iran, they don't have nuclear weapons, engaged in missile posturing and other things,
Hmm.
who may not actually have the authorization to do these types of things, right? Maybe they have tacit support from the top to saber rattle, but in Russia, as far as the command and control of nuclear weapons, most of the people who are making nuclear threats and talking about nuclear dynamics in the war, generals and others, actually are not authorized to use nuclear weapons in the first place. So